What's up, everybody? My name is Thomas, and I'm going to start a new series today where I look over different takes from fans on Twitter, Instagram regarding the Maple Leafs and kind of analyze them. Some of these will be, a little bit of ridiculous takes in my opinion. Some of them are a little more straight edge. So we'll take a look at them today and drop a comment below if you have any opinion on any of these. So the first one I'm going to look at is by Kristen Shilton, and she says that, she's confirming that Kyle Dubas basically said that he's willing to move a top prospect to make the team better before the playoffs. I mean, I don't know why this is such news to everyone. Like, this really isn't a surprise in my opinion. The team is probably has the best roster they've ever had in my opinion, so it definitely makes sense to go for it. And, I don't think there's any untouchable prospects on this team. I know there's a lot of hype about guys like Liljegren and things like that, but I mean, we don't have any top-notch prospects like a Marco Rossi or any of the really big guys from this past draft, so I'm not too concerned about it right now. There's also a response to that tweet from Daver_16, who says, "I agree, but I don't want to go all in on one playoff run. Small move, sure, but don't sell the farm. I want sustained success." I mean, I get where you're coming from, David, but, you have to go all in on one playoff run if you're going to win the cup. Like, if you look at what Tampa did last year, they traded a first-round pick for Barclay Goodrow, and I believe they did the same for Coleman. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time, people thought that was too much, an overpayment, and I don't think they win the cup without those players. Sometimes you just have to go for it. I think this is the year for Toronto with the little bit easier task to get out of the first two rounds with just Canadian teams. So I'm going to have to disagree on that one, man. Like, small moves, sure, but sometimes small moves turn into big moves, and sometimes if it's there, you got to take it. I don't think they should just do something just to do it, but if it makes sense, I'm all for it. All right, 11th_plague, at plague 11th, says, "Being a Leafs fan is rough right now, but it could be worse. I could be a Sabres fan." I mean, this is how I felt after the loss against Ottawa the other day. But in reality, man, like, if you look at the standings, the Leafs are in first place. I think if you told Leafs fans at the start of the season that we'd be in first place, 30 games in, a few points up on Winnipeg, I know they have games in hand, but I think people would take that. So I don't think it's that rough being a Leafs fan right now. I think it's better than normal. I think they'll turn it around. But yeah, being a Sabres fan, I think I'd just stop paying attention if I were them, to be honest. That they just suck real bad. All right. Next one here, we have Joseph Zeta. It says, "Every player that I've heard Toronto be linked to at one point or another." So he's got a little bit of a list here. So we can take a look at this. He's got Philip Forsberg from Nashville, obviously. Mikael Granlund from Nashville, Victor Arvidsson from Nashville, Matthias Ekholm from Nashville. So I'll go through these guys first. There's a lot of talk about Nashville's players being on the block, and obviously with Toronto media or a suitor for all of them, like Forsberg, come on, that's not going to happen. There's no way. Granlund, I think, is a little bit more realistic. He's a UFA at the end of the season, I believe, so that makes it a little bit easier, and I know that's what Dubas is looking for. Arvidsson, I don't really see happening, and I think Ekholm would be a good fit. He's a good defenseman, could help the top four for sure. I think there's other teams that are going to be more in on Ekholm, which will make it more difficult for Toronto. I know Dubas really wants a forward. Then we have Stahl, which is Eric Stahl. I don't know if there's a great fit there. Mark Stahl, I mean, you could add someone like him just for depth on the blue line if someone gets hurt, so I'm not against that one. Rickard Rakell, I think the asking price is too high for him. And Paul Mary, I mean, I don't mind Paul Mary as an addition if they got him at a fair price. I mean, that could work. But in terms of that list, the two ones I'm looking at more realistically would be Granlund, and I think that is someone that Dubas wants to target. And then maybe someone like Mark Stahl, but I don't know if he really makes a huge difference. And Paul Mary's an interesting one. Obviously, Ekholm would be great to get. I just don't really see it happening. Okay. So next we have a poll that someone posted. Ryan, I'm not going to try to pronounce your name. Where are the Toronto Maple Leafs the weakest today for a deep playoff run? So this one's a little bit interesting. So we have offense, defense, goaltending, grit. I think offense, they're not the weakest for a playoff run there. I do think they need another forward, which Dubas tends to think as well. Defense, I mean, they're not great, and they've shown some bad habits lately, but I think that there's enough depth there and some decent defense. Maybe add one guy at the deadline, but even if not, I don't think it's necessarily their weakest point. Grit, I mean, they got Simmons, they got Bogosian. If those guys are healthy, I think they'll be fine there. Grit really isn't their game, and people can complain about that as much as they want, but that's just the way it is. They're not Boston, they're not St. Louis, they're not really that type of team. So obviously I love goaltending for the end here because I personally think that is their biggest weakness for a playoff run. You know, Anderson can play great. I've seen him play great. And the thing about him is I've noticed is he'll have a really good game, but then he'll let in one softie in like a big playoff game. He did it against Columbus last year. Not saying that it was his fault at all, but it tends to happen pretty often with him. And, you know, Hutchinson, he had that one shutout against Edmonton, and even I thought, you know, maybe he's turning over a new leaf. And, I mean, he's bad, guys. It's just the reality of it. He's been a backup his whole career. He was supposed to be our third-string goalie this year. Obviously, Campbell's out. So I think Campbell's a bright spot, but we still don't really know what we have with him because he hasn't played enough. But I do think goaltending is a bit iffy for me. I don't really know what they could do to make it better. There's not that many people available. I've heard Jonathan Bernier's name thrown around. I don't know, guys. I don't know about that. But I think they'll just stick with the goalies. I think Dubas believes in them, and you just kind of have to hope for the best. If Campbell's healthy, it kind of gives you a second option if Anderson's shit in the bed in the playoffs, but we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, this one's from Becca, and she says, I may be one of the few fans to say this, but I'm not willing to trade prospects for a rental. In the long run, that is just not worth it. If it's a player that would be staying or benefiting the team for a while, then that's different, but I'll leave it up to Dubas. All right, so Becca and other fans might have the same opinion. The way I look at it is we can't really, like the Leafs, the Leafs can't really make any moves that'll be players that stay long term. There's the Seattle expansion draft, so that would be one other player you have to protect. Maybe you leave another player unprotected. I don't know if Becca's thinking about that right now. But also, you know, there's no cap space. In Hyman's contract's ending. I don't think they'll keep Anderson, but his contract's ending at the end of the year. So you can't bring someone in with term. That's why Dubas wants to bring someone in that is a rental. And sometimes you have to go for it, like I was saying earlier. I mean, none of the prospects are untouchable in my mind. Some of them are a little bit better than others right now in terms of their value. But I think if the right deal's there, you kind of have to go for it to make the team better now. Like I said, this is the best team they've had in a while, in my opinion, and the most complete team. So you kind of have to go for it. And if not now, when? You know, with the salary cap, it's not easy to have sustained success in the league. It's pretty rare that a team is good for 10 years. It's usually more like 5, maybe 6 or 7 if you're lucky. Sometimes it's only 2 or 3 years. So, you know, you never really know what's going to happen with Matthews when his contract's up, or Marner. I know that's a whiles away, but I think that you kind of have to go for it, and I kind of disagree with that take. Now I got some Instagram comments here from, this one's from the Ottawa game. I'm just going to zero in on one of them here. It says, thanks, Hutch. I mean, I was thinking the same thing. You can't let in 2 soft goals, right, to start the game. Letting in 2 goals to start the game is one thing, but 2 softies like that, I mean, you're just handcuffing your team. And I know it's Ottawa, and the Leafs should be able to come back, but it's not easy to come back from 2-0 against any team in the league. And, you know, Ottawa plays tough every time, and I think they're better than what their record shows for sure. So, yeah, you know, thanks, Hutch. He did lose us that game somewhat, and it wasn't all him. I mean, they didn't play great. But, yeah, I mean, Hutchinson, I hope he doesn't see the net too much in the future, to be honest. That's just how I feel about it, but, yeah. We have another Twitter poll here. It says, which prospect should be untouchable in the upcoming Leafs trade that Kyle Dubas has now confirmed? All right. Well, first of all, and this one's from Ryan. I think he was featured earlier. Maybe I don't know. I mean, Dubas hasn't confirmed any trades. I definitely think he's going to make a move. I don't think he'd make a move if there's no move to make. But I don't really think there's any untouchables. I will go through these guys. So Sandin, I think he could potentially get moved. I think he has a little bit of value. He's played in the NHL. He's looked pretty good for the most part. I'd rather see them keep Sandin, but I mean, it is what it is, right? Robertson, he's probably the one that fans are holding on the most to right now because he had that good season in the OHL and has looked pretty good when he's played for Toronto and, good American-born player. I think he could potentially get moved as well. The thing is the prospects that are going to be moved are probably going to be guys that actually have value. Like if you look at Liljegren, I think his value is a lot below Sandin and Robertson because he hasn't really played as much and he doesn't really look. He's looking like he could potentially be a bust. I'm not saying he is, and I don't think he's going to be, but there's a small chance, I feel like. And then Amirov, I think since he's the newest and he looked really good in the World Juniors this year for Russia, I think he's the one that is a little bit higher valued and one that I would like to see them keep and see them develop. But, it could he could be on the way out as well. You never really know. All right. So we have another Instagram comment here. And this one says, what a sloppy mess. I smell a first-round exit. That's the one I'm going to focus on here. I mean, I think all this speculation about first-round exits is kind of stupid. I mean, you never really know until you see the playoffs. So sometimes a team that looks like they're going to be a first-round exit makes it to the conference finals. Sometimes, Tampa gets swept by Columbus and then goes and wins the cup the next year. Hockey is a tough sport. There's a lot of parity. People tend to think it's more like basketball where you can predict who's going to win more. It's not like that at all. I have faith in the Leafs this year. Will I be surprised if they get bounced in the first round? Not really. We've seen it so many times. But I do expect more from them, and I think if they don't pass the first round, and you could argue the second round as well, there's going to be, oh my God, an absolute gone show in Toronto. All right, we got another comment here. Says the goaltending is horrible. I mean, don't have much to say about that. Leafs get a 5-day rest, then it's back to a losing streak again. I think they'll be okay. And then we have one about Mikheyev's goal was a goal. I don't care. Leafs versus refs again. Literally made no contact with the cord. I saw the play. I think it was close either way. I don't think it was like an atrocious call. I don't think it was a good call necessarily, but I mean, that can't be the difference in the game against Ottawa. That happens to every team. I've seen games where the other team gets a goal disallowed, and it feels like it doesn't happen that often to the Leafs, actually. So I don't really think we can blame that one on the refs. Although I will say the officiating in the league in general this year has been so inconsistent and so painful to watch at times. But then, some games it's not as bad. We have another comment here. Imagine if someone on the Leafs would fight. The Leafs are not a fighting team, and fighting in the NHL is not as relevant as it used to be. I've seen fights this year. I've seen Bogosian fight. I've seen Simmons fight when he's in the lineup. He should be coming back soon. They have guys that will fight. I mean, look at what just happened to Ben Sherratt in Montreal. He got in a fight, broke his hand. Do you really want guys on Toronto going out and breaking their hand and things like that? I mean, there's a time to fight, and fights don't get you goals necessarily. They can boost the team for sure, but I'm not too worried about fighting at all. And then we have one more that I'm going to look at right here. Another Instagram comment saying, this is not Stanley Cup contending team at all. This kind of goes back to the first round exit comment. We don't know if they're a Stanley Cup contending team. They look like they should be, especially because of the North Division. So say they get out of the North Division, they get to the semifinals. I mean, anything can happen at that point, guys. So I think that's a bit of a stretch to say that this early. I don't think they're a top contender necessarily. I don't put them up with Tampa, Carolina, Vegas, Colorado necessarily. But I think that they're kind of a little bit of a step below that. And a lot of the times those teams end up winning the cup, right? Like St. Louis won the cup. Wasn't really expected to. even when Washington won, people had kind of lost faith in them by that point. So, I don't really agree with that, but yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. Like I said at the start, leave a comment below if you have any comments about this or any takes or any ideas about what the Leafs could do in terms of the trade deadline. I think it's an interesting year for sure, and I'm definitely enjoying it. And I will start doing more of these videos, probably do some based on specific games and kind of take screenshots throughout the games of topics I want to talk about. So if you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments below, and have a great day. Thank you.